Today, on this episode of The Crossover, we will be discussing Overcome with Navy SEAL leader, best-selling author, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur Jason Redman. Learn how the right mindset can help you and your team not only survive a crisis, but actually thrive and launch from it. Much more on this episode of The Crossover. Good afternoon, everyone. We've got another awesome interview today with my favorite group of people on the planet, the Navy SEALs. Hey, Jay, how you doing?
Dr. Rick, what's going on, man?
Good, man. Listen, thanks for joining us, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Yeah, absolutely. Always honored to share knowledge.
Well, great, man. Listen, just while everyone's logging on, I'm going to do a brief introduction. We have the absolute pleasure of speaking with my friend today, Jason Redman, a true hero, role model, and really inspiration to many, including myself. As background, Jay is a retired Navy SEAL lieutenant, best-selling author, and entrepreneur. During his career, he spent 11 years as a SEAL and 11 years as a SEAL leader in Iraq and Afghanistan. As you'll hear, he's lived through it all at the highest level in his career, from both successes and failures. Notably, he's been shot 8 times, including 1 round to the face, and he nearly died during an enemy ambush, and we'll hear all about that later on. And through all of these experiences, Jay has developed the Overcome mindset that he's published and now teaches teams, businesses, and organizations all around the world. Jay is a New York Times bestselling author of the book The Trident and has appeared on Fox News, CBS, and CNN. He's also been featured in multiple documentaries, including the History Channel's Navy SEALs, America's Secret Warriors, and he also played an actor in the Perfect Day film. So here today to talk about his latest best-selling book called Overcome, How to Crush Adversity with Leadership Techniques of America's Toughest Warriors. Jay, super excited to talk to you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Rick, thank you, man. Honored to be here.
Well, listen, let's just jump right into it. You know, what inspired you to become a Navy SEAL? Was there a particular moment? Was there something that happened in your life?
I grew up in a military, a family of patriotism and military service. My dad wasn't still in the military when I was younger, but I grew up learning about what he did, what my grandfathers did, and just from a very young age, I wanted to go in the military. My dad had SEALs go through airborne school with him, so he was familiar with them. My parents divorced. I spent a little bit of time down in the Virgin Islands and definitely grew to love the water. Learned how to dive and snorkel and bodyboard surf and all these different things. And my dad was like, "Hey, you like the water so much, maybe you should look into these guys." And this was the actually it would have been late 80s at that time. And really there wasn't a whole lot about the SEAL teams out. You couldn't find much. They were very secretive back then. But what I did manage to find was, hey, some of the toughest training in the world, best of the best. And that just piqued my interest. I don't know what it was. I just said, that's what I want to do. And I set my sights on that at about 14 years old and never looked back.
I feel like every SEAL that I talk to has the same mental fortitude. And everyone says that, especially when it comes to Navy SEAL training, the mental fortitude is actually more important than the physical fortitude. Do you agree?
1,000%. Often when I speak on stages, I always start my presentations. I put up a picture of the Trident. And I talk about how difficult it is to earn the Trident. I think oftentimes people are fascinated. SEALs are in the limelight right now, so people are fascinated. You got the SEAL team show, you got the movies, you got all this stuff. The training is legendary for how difficult it is. But what I tell people is what makes individuals a SEAL has nothing to do with this, and it has everything to do with this and this. And those are human traits that anybody can build within themselves. You may not physically have the ability to be a SEAL, but you definitely mentally and emotionally have the ability to overcome adversity and be better in your life. And that's the key things that SEAL training teaches you.
Now, as a SEAL, you've obviously experienced situations, high stakes situations, that 99.9% of society will never even come close to. How have these experiences molded you as a person?
It's interesting. I think if you look at what the SEAL teams does and special operations in general, what makes SEALs are two critical components. I mean, the Navy has poured millions of dollars into trying to figure this out, but no matter what, the statistics have remained the same all the way back from World War II when we started. Our forefathers were the Scouts and Raiders all the way until today. And I personally believe, and I think most guys would agree with me, the two things that really make SEALs or exceptional special operations personnel. Number one is that overcome mindset, that the no quit gene. When I speak on it, I call it the overcome mindset. And number two is the ability to process massive amounts of complex information in a chaotic environment at a very fast pace. So, talking about like when you step into a room where there are potential terrorists and you're having in split seconds decide bad guy, hostage, my buddy's right next to me, and you're having to execute through a flow of shooting while other people are shooting at you. Not a whole lot of people can do that. Most people shut down or they start to make mistakes. And I think that's truly what makes the difference. You translate that into real life, and obviously those are things that have served me very well after I got out of the military. I've had to deal with massive amounts of adversity. I've had to deal with failure. I've had to deal with, we live in the information age. I mean, we're all being bombarded with information. So how quickly do you sift through that information and push away the stuff that's irrelevant and focus on the things that you need?
God, that is so well said. I think that another thing that separates SEALs, at least from what I can tell, is their leadership ability. How did you develop your leadership skills? And more importantly, do you think great leaders are born or they're made?
Leaders are definitely made. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, I will say this. I think genetically and personality wise, there are certain traits that people have that probably lend them to be better leaders than others. So some of us may have to work harder to be a leader than some who naturally have good leadership traits. But leadership is definitely learned. I am a perfect example of this because, and I'm going to take one step back on that. The SEAL teams we build a culture of leadership. And we teach every guy from day one. It starts in buds. It's part of our SEAL ethos. In the absence of leadership, I will step up and lead. So we frequently put every single guy in a position of leadership and encourage them, even if they don't have a leadership title, even if they're not one of the, key technical leadership positions with a leadership title next to their name. We tell them, hey, look, at any point in time, all these leaders could be killed. And guess what? That means you're now in charge, from the newest new guy all the way to the more senior guy. And we encourage that at all times. We do it in training, frequently in training. We'll tell the leadership, I was a training instructor for about 2 years, and we'll tell all the leadership, you're no longer allowed to talk. Or we'll totally pull them out of a training scenario. Like in the middle of the scenario, we'll just be like, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, come here. And we pull them out of the scenario, and we don't say anything. We allow the team to start to recognize, hey, who's making the calls? And suddenly they have to step up and make the calls. All those things are learned. It takes experience, it takes time, it takes recognition in yourself, it takes confidence in your own abilities. As for me, I probably have some natural leadership tendencies, I will admit that, but I got off course on my leadership journey. As frequently happens with young men who find success at a young age, I got arrogant and I got a little full of myself and kind of thought I knew everything. And those things almost ended up being my downfall. And I started making mistakes as a leader. I started to buy into the path of, hey, that this rank on my collar and this emblem on my chest actually means something related to leadership, and they don't. A title you have, a badge you wear, helmet, whatever it is, military emblem, none of that lends itself to leadership. You, as a human, are the only thing that contribute to leadership. And the fundamental principles of leadership are how well do you lead yourself? How well do you set, structure? How well do you go after goals? How well do you maintain positivity in the face of negativity? How well do you have discipline through the good times and the bad times and the ups and downs of life? That's what makes good leaders. And I had lost sight of that and, kind of had this pretty long, tumultuous journey. That's everything that my book, The Trident, is about. It's about that failure as a leader. For me, failure as a young leader and having to come back and build myself up and learn how to be an effective leader.
I'm glad you said that about how the arrogance got to you, because everyone I talk to about leadership continues to mention that being humble and that humility is such an important part of being a great leader. So it was great to hear you say that. Let's move on to your book, Overcome. What was the impetus for this best-selling book?
So when my first book, The Trident, came out in 2013, it went on to be a New York Times bestseller. But The Trident is the story. So it literally follows me as a young SEAL who got commissioned, who had accelerated in his life, and then suddenly made these mistakes. And The Trident is the journey of me growing up as a young leader, of figuring everything out, of building these systems, if you will, into my life so I could be a better leader, that really developed when I was in Ranger School. As part of my punishment, I got sent to Ranger School. And it was there that I really started to grow up and figure out, hey, man, like if you want to be a leader, there's a lot more to it than just saying, hey, look at me, I'm the leader. And all of that led up to when I was, I got my career back on track after screwing up, which is almost impossible in special operations. And over a 2-3 year period, I managed to do it. And here I was at the top of the game. I had really overcome the impossible to come back. And at the end of that next combat deployment is when I was severely wounded. And suddenly it all came to a grinding halt. But because of that hard leadership journey I had been through, it really set me up for success. And I use the same formula. And I tell people, the formula is the same regardless of the adversity we're going through in life. And I applied that same formula to just crush through my injuries and launch off that X. And we'll talk about that later. But so all of that to be said, everybody was reading The Trident and they said, how did you do this? Like, how did you do this? How did you have this severe failure and come back when almost no one else would have? And then how were you severely wounded and you came back from that when no one else could have? So that's how Overcome came to be. And it took me about 7 years because I'll be honest, in the beginning, I would just say, well, it's the Overcome mindset, but we had not broken it down. And over about 7 years, I really peeled back the onion and looked at everything that I had done, everything that I saw other great leaders in special operations had done. And we broke that into actual systems and concepts and modalities, methodologies that people can use in everyday life. And that is what Overcome is. It is a how to crush adversity and how to lead yourself to success, regardless of the hardships you're going through.
One of the things that your book talks about is how to perform your best under pressure. And, we hear about this all the time, right? Certain people just thrive in that environment where other people just wilt. What do you think predicts that ability to succeed under pressure? Have you seen certain characteristics that kind of flow through people?
Some of that is learned, 1,000%. And I do think some of that is a little bit genetic. I mean, I think there are some people I definitely am the type of person. I think a lot of special operations guys are similar, that when the world is burning down around them, they're at their best. I know I can get super bored very easy if the world is not running at a very fast pace, which is where structure and discipline has to come in my life to make sure I'm still getting things done I need to do. But I do think that it's totally learned. If you do hard things, if you do chaotic things, if you can figure out how to put structure and discipline in your life, if you can teach yourself how to focus, that is literally that all you're having to do in the chaotic, complex environments. Most people focus on the things they have no control over. The world is burning, this kind of a combat probably equation for right now, but bombs are going off around you, bullets are flying by you. Oftentimes people would ask me, hey, when you were in intense firefights, were you ever scared? No, not because I'm this super brave guy who didn't feel fear. It was because I had so much to do I had a long list, structure and discipline I built into myself that, hey, in the middle of a firefight, these are all the things that I have to get done. I'm trying to see where my guys are. I'm trying to see where the enemy is. I'm trying to make sure we have a head count. I'm trying to make sure we're addressing the different fields of fire. I'm trying to make sure my guys aren't exposed. I'm trying to get aircraft up on the horn so that I can bring in a fire mission. I'm trying to decide, do I have guys wounded? If they're wounded, we need a casualty collection point. I need to get a medevac over here to work on this guy and move them off the line. I'm focused on, we need a medevac now. So how do we secure this firefight so that we can bring in a medevac? Most people start focusing on things that they have no control over. Same thing in life. I mean, firefight's a pretty extreme scenario, but just let's make this a business scenario. You have all these different fires you're dealing with at business, and most people are focusing on things they have zero control over, and that's why they get overwhelmed. If you can teach yourself to have focus and be able to control only the things you can and ignore the things that you have no control over, that's where people are super effective and they operate. That's elite performing individuals right there.
I mean, that's exactly what most people have said, exactly what you just basically expressed, the ability to ignore the noise and focus in on the goal at hand and just block everything else out. And I think that applies to the military, it applies to medicine, it certainly applies to surgery, it applies to business, it applies to anything in life. If it's a high stakes situation, understand what matters and what doesn't matter, and just stay focused. So it's great to hear that.
And Rick, I'll throw in there, even not in a high stakes situation, we're living in a day and age where we are bombarded with information.
Yeah.
And people are so distracted. We are interrupted, thousands of times a day from this insidious little device that we're using to do this interview. I mean, the chirps, the bangs, the tweets, the deets, the whatever it is, and everyone instantly pulls it up, pulls it up, pulls it up. So they can never get anything done because they don't know how to block those things out or ignore them, because the reality is those things are irrelevant. Those things are not helping you move the needle in your life. And those are some of the big things that I talk about. Or the news cycle, the media, that's another one. I mean, the media is just off the rails.
Totally.
I'll be honest, the majority of the information they put out is useless. I stopped watching the news about a year ago. I still know everything that's going on in the world. But what I am missing out on is the sensationalism, the division, the inflammatory rhetoric that's designed to get you angry, and that throws people off because they're more focused on that than the things that are going to make you, your business, your family, or your physical health better.
I always say when people are like, what predicts success? And not military, not medicine, not law, what predicts success in the year 2023? And I think it's the ability, just like you said, to have the ability to multitask and handle high throughput information, filter it, decipher it to what matters, and get all that shit done. And so I think it's way more of a mental game, and the ability to compute the information as it comes in. I think most people cannot compute it at the rate that you do. And I think that's what has put you to that higher level. But I really want to talk about, all the adversity that you've been through, because it's, like you said, it's so inspirational. Everyone talks about, oh, I've succeeded, I've accomplished all this, which you have. But what makes your story so unique is that you failed and then you succeeded. And I really want to get into that. You were shot 8 times, including 1 time to the face. Tell us how you survived and how you, as you claim, crushed those injuries and overcame them.
So yeah, in September of 2007, we were at the end of our very intense combat deployment in Iraq, operating out of the Anbar province, and my team and I walked into a very well executed ambush, trying to capture or kill the #1 Al-Qaeda leader for the Anbar province. Myself and multiple members of my team were shot. We were caught in a machine gun crossfire, so 2 machine guns, and we estimate 12 to 15 AK shooters. So
Wow.
super intense firefight. A fellow teammate of mine, DJ Shipley, who went on to serve at the highest tiers and saw a lot of combat, said that firefight was the most intense firefight he was in his entire career. Most violent firefight he was in. And myself and 2 other teammates were shot multiple times as we were trying to navigate this. I owe my life to my teammates first and foremost. Those guys fell back. I was hit across the body armor first. I was stitched across the body armor. I took 2 rounds in the left elbow. I took rounds off my helmet. I had my left night vision tube shot off. I took rounds off my gun. I took rounds off my right side plate, recognizing it was a really bad situation. I actually thought my arm was shot off when it was hit. I actually took a round, which we didn't know this until later, when I got to the hospital. I took 2 rounds. One round hit me in the lower bicep, and the other round hit me on the inside of the forearm. So the doctor said they couldn't have done a better job of destroying my elbow the way that they hit me than what they did. And what it did is it deadened all the nerves. I mean, everybody out there has hit their funny bone. It felt like that only amplified like 1,000. I felt like I had been like a lightning bolt had hit me in the arm and traveled up my arm and just spiked me in the back of the skull. And then suddenly I couldn't feel my arm anymore. So when I reached over, I couldn't feel it. I'm assuming it probably caught on my gear, but when I reached over in the chaos, I didn't feel it. So my first thought was my arm's been shot off. I turned, recognizing, and I'm still taking super heavy fire. Bullets are all around me. I turned to try and move back to the only point of cover that we had, which was we had a large John Deere tractor, like large tractor tire, and there was a tree off to the left that DJ Shipley had gotten behind. And I turned to try and move back to the guys, and it was at that point I caught a round from behind that hit me right in front of my ear, traveled through my face, exited the right side of my nose, blew out my right cheekbone. What was left of my cheekbone broke and kicked out to the right. It vaporized my orbital floor. It broke all the bones above my eye. My eye fell into this newfound hole in my face. It broke the head of my jaw, and it shattered my jaw to my chin, and it knocked me out. And the guys saw me fall in front of them and thought I was dead. Um, so I initially owe my life to my teammates, because what happened is they fought back pretty violently. And at a point in time, there was a little bit of a lull in fire. My team leader ran forward and grabbed me and dragged me back to the tire. I got to back up. I think they thought I was dead. And I came to what we estimate 5 to 10 minutes after this firefight had been going. So literally there's just gunfire traveling above me. They're shooting above me and the enemy's shooting above me. And about 5, 10 minutes in, I came to and I called out to my team leader, and they realized I was still alive. So he ran forward and grabbed me and dragged me back to that tire. And they got a tourniquet on my arm, which probably number one saved my life right there. And they packed my face, these big open facial wounds. They packed my face with Kerlex. And then we continued to fight. They continued to fight. I was out of the fight at this point. I was drifting in and out of consciousness. And they ended up calling in the closest fire mission in the entire Iraq war by an AC-130 gunship that was up overhead. We literally called fire directly on our position. I remember those things happening. I remember my team leader said, "Hey, stand by, incoming," and listening to those rounds come in. The machine gunner was still churning away, and I remember when those first couple of rounds hit, and then the debris and explosion went up over of us, and then that gun went cold, and that guy started crying out in pain. He was calling out, Allah Akbar. He was calling out to his God. And I remember thinking to myself, like, stand by, here he comes, because I knew the next rounds were coming in. And then the next thing I started to focus on was I was still losing a lot of blood, and I was bleeding out. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I remember thinking to myself, like, at first thinking to myself that I'm probably not going to make it, that, hey man, you're going to die here. And that was a pretty disconcerting thought. I'll be honest, it was sad, and it made me angry too, because I did not want the enemy to have the satisfaction of killing me. It's a huge point of pride when they kill a special operations guys. It's a huge victory for the enemy when that occurs. So I didn't want to be that guy. I also didn't want to be, I also didn't want, I was the leader. I put us in this situation, and now here we are in this terrible situation. And then I started thinking about my family, like, hey, you're never going to see your family again. Like, um, so all of that came together to like this thought, like, hey, you have to stay awake to stay alive. I wanted to go to sleep. That is the bottom line. Like, it's the greatest fatigue I've ever felt in my life. Everything in me, like just to breathe, took effort. But I remember I had watched a show called Baghdad ER, and I remember the statistic. They said, hey, if you can get to the military ER, our military and civilian trauma surgeons that are working there are so good, they can you have a 90% chance of making it home if you show up alive with a pulse. So that became my laser focus. I kind of blocked everything else out, and it was just stay awake to stay alive, stay awake to stay alive. And, firefight we estimate lasted about 30 to 35 minutes. We ended up bringing in multiple fire missions on our position. Medevac helicopter came in and they loaded us. Um, Kind of a funny story. The helicopter landed, I don't know, 50, 75 yards away, and my team leader started to drag me to the helicopter. And I hadn't felt a whole lot of pain. I felt severe pain when my arm was hit. After I'd been shot in the face, I felt no pain. But all of a sudden, when he started dragging me, all the pain came back in tenfold. So I was like, stop dragging me. I'll fucking get up and I'll, I'll walk. So he helped me and I got up and I remember I thought my arm had been shot off. And also at some point I took my helmet off in the firefight, which actually took a round directly through it. So I still have that helmet that's got a round through it. And I told him, I said, grab my arm and grab my helmet. And I walked to the helicopter and managed to get on the helicopter under my own power. But all the time just focused on stay awake to stay alive, stay awake to stay alive. And so I owe my life to my teammates, my team leader, that Air Force AC-130 gunship, the 4th Special Operations Squadron. I also owe my life to the amazing medical professionals in that ER that night who busted their ass to save my life. I mean, 7 blood transfusions over about 48 hours, and they saved me.
Wow. I think I speak for everyone listening that is the craziest story I've ever heard in my life. That's unbelievable, unreal. Not really sure what else to say after a story like that. But I think most people, including myself, are going to be like, well, that's a situation. These are experiences that none of us are ever going to experience. You're kind of living in a bubble. But tell us, again, this is a big part of your book. Why are these not SEAL lessons, but these are life lessons, human lessons?
Yeah, because what I came to find is as the years went on, so I sustained this horrific enemy ambush, like my teammate DJ said, the most intense, violent firefight any of us had ever seen. And he went on to see much more combat than I did. Um, and it was super overwhelming. I won't lie. It was tremendously overwhelming. I mean, in the middle of this thing, the amount of fire we were taking, I mean, I wanted to literally just scrape a hole in the ground and stick my head in and just pray it would go away. But obviously that does not happen. Fast forward 96 hours later, I'm laying in a hospital bed in Bethesda, and I survived this enemy ambush only to wake up to all these doctors inundating me with bad news. Hey, Lieutenant, your elbow is effectively destroyed. You have no use of your left hand. We're thinking about amputating your arm. Your face is totally mangled. The structural integrity of your skull is compromised. So we've got to figure out how to rebuild the structural integrity of your skull. You're wired shut, you're trach. There's nothing left of my nose. I got these tubes that are coming out of my nose. I'm trach. They're feeding me through a stomach tube. And I remember thinking to myself, like, don't forget, this is right at the end of my leadership failure journey, 2.5 years later, almost 3 years later, where I had built myself back up and earned back the respect of my teammates and my credibility as a leader, suddenly to find myself laying in this hospital bed. I remember when they were telling me all these negative things, like, it's going to take years to put you back together. We may be amputating your arm. all these different things. I literally felt like I was back in the gunfight in Iraq, except this time it wasn't the bullets and bombs of battle. It was like the bullets and bombs of life. And that process of, I went back to my leadership failure and everything I put in place, and I realized that, the systems that I had used to build myself back up as a leader are the same systems I decided to use in that hospital. Leadership is leadership regardless of where you are. You can lead in an office. You can lead in an operating room. You can lead on the streets as a police officer. You can lead as a mom or dad in your house. The principles are the same. You can lead from a hospital bed. It's just your attitude and the systems and structure and overcome mindset that you put in place to grind forward despite the adversity that's in your path. And that's what I said in that bed. I said, okay, I will, in the military vernacular that I speak on often, I will get off the X and drive forward. And that became my focus. I said, hey, this is like medical SEAL training. It's going to be hard. You're going to have setbacks. And all you can do is just continue to grind forward and put one foot in front of the other. And that became my focus. So everybody in life is going to get ambushed. And no, it may not be this vicious battlefield ambush, but every one of you who are watching right now, if you are over 18 years old, I'll say over 20, you probably have experienced some form of life ambush. And I define a life ambush as anything that will forever leave mental, emotional, physical, or deep financial scars, meaning you don't really recover from them. We get better, but they leave scars. They leave mental scars, they leave emotional scars, they leave physical scars, and they leave financial scars. And when we have major life ambushes, we look back and they still hurt when we think about them. Every major ambush I've had in my life, including that firefight, hurts when I think about it. Like, I tense up. I mean, it was intense. There's a high level of trauma that goes with it. Everyone out there, you're going to encounter those things too, whether it's the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, some sort of personal and professional failure, illness, injury, accident, sexual trauma, the loss of a loved one. One of the biggest ones I've seen is the loss of a child. These are all major life ambushes. And the interesting thing about major life ambushes is if I hooked you up to medical devices that measured your heart rate and breathing and respirations and brainwave activity and all these different things, and you looked at mine in that firefight, they'd be almost identical. Because the human body doesn't say, oh, I'm in a gunfight. The human body only says, oh my God, I am in an emergency situation, and all the stress and cortisol and adrenaline is jacked into your system trying to deal with this massive ambush you're encountering. So that's why, for people who say, oh my God, I can't relate to that, you're wrong. Because guess what? Life ambushes are coming.
But, really onto that point, your book focuses on that adversity is not only something you get through, but you launch off of it and you actually self-improve. So failure and adversity is an opportunity for personal growth. Can you just expand on that?
Yeah, so many people, when bad things happen, they're like, oh my God, this bad thing happened. And they're right. I mean, it sucks when bad things happen. But if you can flip that around and you can say, okay, it sucks this bad thing happened, but the good news about when we're facing major adversity, it's an opportunity to get better. We don't grow through, growth occurs in discomfort and hardship. You will never become a better leader if you're not pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and you're not seeking out new experiences. Same thing goes for everything else in life. So so when bad things happen, if you're willing to embrace it and figure out, I don't know what's going to happen, I'm not going to quit, I'm going to drive through. And accepting the fact that you may not get back and, whatever it is you lost. This is when I talk about the overcome mindset. Sometimes people are like, well, my goal is to get back exactly what I lost. Well, guess what? Sometimes in life that will never happen. So really, your ability to drive through adversity sometimes maybe just be saying, well, I've lost this part of my life. I've lost my health. I've lost a relationship. I've lost a job, but I can still get better. I may have to take a new path now. I frequently talk about in my TEDx talk, I talked about the end moments, which frequently life ambushes go hand in hand with the end moment. often become new beginnings. And this is where you can launch. Because when you embrace a new beginning and you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get better. I'm going to crush forward. I'm going to drive. I'm going to take action, and I'm going to grow and figure things out from this. That's where you truly get better. And the great news about them is they stack. Every life ambush you've been through, if you navigated through it successfully, it only sets you up for success for the future ones, because it builds muscle memory, and that's what makes a difference. So life ambushes suck. I mean, I hate when people get on the X. I mean, it's painful, but if you're willing to embrace it and navigate through it, it's going to make you better. And sometimes I watch people that new beginning becomes a whole nother level of their life, something they never expected. I mean, look at me. I'm a perfect example. I thought I'd be a 30-year military guy or longer. That was my goal. I had hoped that someday I could command a SEAL team, and obviously all that went out the window when I got severely injured. But now look at me. I mean, I'm out there, I'm speaking all across the country. I've created a whole new thing. None of that would ever happen if it wasn't for A, my leadership failure, and B, getting severely wounded on the battlefield.
I think you kind of said it best when, life is hard for everyone, right? No one lives a perfect life. Every single person faces adversity. And what is going to separate successful people from people who are not successful is how you handle the adversity. How do you overcome it? How do you launch from that point? I think it's a great point of your book. Another thing you talk about is the importance of kind of maintaining perspective. And you're quoted as saying that there's no bad days, only good days and great days. Can you get into that?
No bad days, baby. And this is my skull. So, I mean, we have a whole line of clothing that's built around this. And this really is a way of life. And it is. It comes down to that one word. I think perspective is one of the most powerful words you can have, one of the most powerful things as a leader. So many people in this day and age, we live in the instantaneous society, and people don't get things instantaneously. They lose their minds. We've lost patience. We've lost appreciation for life and relationships, and that sometimes things take times, and that most people are not malicious. It's just, but I watch people that just lose their minds all over the place. And I just have been all over the world. I have seen the poorest of the poor. I have seen the highest levels of violence. And it has given me an appreciation for this life that I don't use that phrase anymore. And the phrase is, oh my God, I had a bad day. It's become such a trite thing to say. And I catch people on it. I tell them, is it really a bad day, or is it merely a schedule disruption? Because for the vast majority of people, if it even reaches the schedule disruption, oftentimes people throw this out. Oh my God, I had a bad day. It's not even a schedule disruption. It's, whatever. But for most people, it's just that your day didn't unfold in the manner that you thought it would. My definition of a bad day is a life ambush. It is something that will leave mental, emotional, physical, or financial scars on you. So I now live my life. I'm so thankful to still be alive. Most of us only get one shot to go through this life. And I am fortunate enough to be living on try number 2. So because of that, I've got tremendous perspective. I try to always be positive. I'm not perfect, but I try to always be positive. I try to not say, oh my God, I had a bad day. I have tough days, I have hard days, but if I woke up this morning, it is a good day. If you woke up alive, the gift of life is such an amazing thing, because I often think about my teammates who are no longer here. They would give anything to still be here. All the problems that you're dealing with, the schedule disruption, the bullshit that you're saying it's a bad day, I'm telling you, there are people who fought for your freedom who would give anything to be dealing with the problems you're dealing with. They're no longer here. Their families would give anything for them to be here dealing with that problem. And I try and live my life that way now. If I woke up, it's a good day. It's up to me to make it a great day. Doesn't mean I won't have hard days or tough days, but I now live that motto. No bad days.
I love it, man. Absolutely love it. I mean, you're clearly someone who relishes challenges, and you've been through it all. What's your next challenge? What are you looking forward to?
So I've got different levels of challenges. I've got right now a physical challenge. I've decided to get myself back in the best shape of my life, and I maintain a pretty high level of fitness. It's a part of who we are, and I personally believe it's the foundational level of what I call the Pentagon of Peak Performance, physical leadership. But I want to take it to the next level. I want to get back to really setting that example. I'm not a big guy, so between 170, 175 down to 12% body fat with some pretty big lifts. I'm fortunate enough to be, I've become friends with Don Saladino, who's a big trainer for Hollywood. Don set me up a new training program, so I'm hitting that hard. That's one of my goals. Professionally, I'm building my goals within our business to try and help more people. We're getting ready to launch our brand new Point Man for Life online course, which will teach you how to define your mission. If you ever wondered who you are and if you're living your mission in this life, you should check out our Point Man for Life course that's going to be launching here in the next couple of weeks. And then it's continue to help people become the best version of themselves. Building our coaching program, I help people get off the X. I help people take action. So many people get stuck and tell themselves they can't do something. And one of the best things, I've got tons and tons of experience. And there's almost nothing in my life I have not experienced that I can share with others to help you drive forward and get off the X. It ain't a guarantee because at the end of the day, it's about you. But those are the things that we're doing in our business. We're working on book number 4. My wife and I are getting ready to lock down a deal for a relationship book because a lot of people have read about her and the Trident, and they are fascinated with how did you guys do that? How did you guys survive these major ambushes and still stay married? And so now this book's going to come out that's going to help people to be better in their relationships too.
What an interview, man. I'm going to wrap it up because I know you're super busy, but all I can say is, wow. It takes a lot to inspire me. You definitely inspire me. Your story, what you've overcome, your message, your mission about perspective, getting off the X, truly inspirational. I think that you said it best when people can't make themselves the victim, right? Everyone goes through hardship. No matter who you are, you're facing adversity. And the people that are not going to succeed are going to feel sorry for themselves, make themselves the victims, and they're going to wilt and they're going to fail. People like you who almost die and undergo, as you say, life ambushes, take that, kind of internalize it, and then improve and actually come out stronger. That's what makes you so successful. And I think the interview kind of sums that up. And I'm ready to go and, be a SEAL right now. I'm ready to sign up. Can I sign up?
Absolutely. Yeah, and on that point, it's not a SEAL thing, it's a human thing. But unfortunately, we're living in a society right now. I talk about this, the victim mindset. That's the real pandemic that's hitting our country right now. And even the world at times. This idea that if things don't go according to plan, you're a victim, that it's somebody else's fault. And are there external factors that influence what we're doing? 1,000% yes. But at the end of the day, it falls on you. And so many people instead focus on you're a victim. We want to paint people, race, creed, color, gender, persuasion, demographic, whatever it is. Oh, you're a victim. That's BS. Because there are millions and millions and millions of people of every race, creed, color, gender who are amazingly successful because they didn't buy into that victim BS. They said, I'm going to drive forward and get off the X. And that is my challenge to you. Get out there, stop buying into the BS that, that you're a victim. Instead, get off that X, drive forward, overcome. Action is the answer. And it doesn't mean you're going to be instantly successful, man. That growth path is long, it's hard. And sometimes I can't tell you how many times I've come up with a new plan that I implemented that was a total failure. And guess what? I picked myself up and said, okay, I guess we need to go in a different direction. But that's what successful people do. They don't feel sorry for themselves. They take action and they execute.
And I also want to say one more thing. I think that the opportunity for success has never been greater because these millennials, the young generation, most of them, not all, most of them have that victim mentality. And I think that in this generation, in this era, if someone incorporates your overcome mentality and gets off the X and deals with adversity correctly and they grind, the opportunity for success has never been higher because the general malaise amongst millennials of being the victim is so pervasive. So Just a message. I hope every millennial buys your book and reads it.
Well, I would appreciate it. I am definitely on a one-man crusade to build better leaders, more resilient people. So that is my goal. And guys, anybody can do it. You know, don't buy into this. Oh, well, he's a SEAL. Of course he can do it. I am human, and I bleed, and I stress, and I struggle, and I have issues and problems and doubts. But the difference is I don't let them stop me from continuing to drive forward. And you have that same ability. If you are living in a free society, and there are places in the world where they're limited because of oppressive societies, because of the way their societal and political structure works, we don't have that here. People try and paint and say, oh, well, you know, you're not able to do that's BS. We have the freedom that you can get out and figure things out if you are willing to do it. But there's so many people who are looking for the easy button and the shortcut. It doesn't exist. Trust me, I know. I tried to take the shortcut as a leader and I bounced and failed. So,
Jay, unreal, man. Unreal. Thank you for your time.
Dr. Rick, thank you, man. I appreciate all of you. Check me out, jasonredman.com, or click that follow button here on IG.
Absolutely worth every single second reading that book. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Later, man.
Later.